Brent's fist shot toward Amara's face, but she ducked, twisted, and dropped him flat with a sweep that silenced the entire arena. Logan lunged at Alyssa only to be flipped clean over her shoulder and pinned in seconds. The Reed sisters didn't just defend themselves, they shattered everything their bullies thought they knew about power. Hi everyone. Today we're diving into a story that might just stop you in your tracks. It's about courage, silence, and the kind of everyday injustice that far too many people brush aside until someone stands up. This isn't about superheroes. This is about two young girls, 13 years old, bright, kind, determined. And what happened when they dared to step into a world that claimed to teach discipline, but instead tried to teach them fear? This could happen to anyone, even you. So before we dive into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Let's begin. Alyssa and Amara Reed were the kind of twins people remembered. Not because they looked exactly alike, they didn't really. Alyssa had a bold streak in her walk and a laugh that could fill a whole room. Amara, quieter but fierce in her own way, always observed a moment longer than she spoke. They were close more than most siblings. And when they made the decision to join Ironcrest Dojo, it was with one goal: to become black belts together. Ironcrest wasn't just any dojo, it was the Dojo. Trophies lined the walls, old portraits of stern-faced masters stared down from above, and the town of Ridgeview whispered about its prestige like it was holy. If you trained at Ironcrest, you were somebody, or at least you were expected to act like you were. Their first day was a warm Saturday in September. The dojo smelled like cedar planks and sweat. They wore crisp, new white GIs, nervously adjusting their belts as they stepped onto the mat for the first time. The air was thick with discipline and tension. It didn't take long for them to notice something. Nearly every student in the large class was white, and nearly every eye turned toward them as they walked in. From the corner, Sensei Tomlin approached, tall, lean, mid-60s with a face that didn't smile unless he meant it, which he rarely did. Names, he asked bluntly. Alyssa and Amara Reed. Amara said, "Join the beginner's circle. We'll start with stances." That was it. No welcome, no handshake, no warmth. The sisters exchanged a quick glance but obeyed. A few paces over stood two boys who didn't wear the usual white belts. Their belts were black, their stances loose, and their expressions smug. Brent Wallace and Logan Pierce. Everyone seemed to watch them, whisper around them. Royalty of dojo cliques had a throne. Brent was the first to notice the sisters. "Well," he muttered just loud enough, "looks like we've diversified." Logan snorted. About time they let in charity cases. It wasn't just cruel, it was designed to sting, and it landed. Alyssa's fist clenched by her side. Amara looked down, pretending not to hear. What hurt more was the silence. No instructor corrected them, no student objected. Everyone just kept stretching. As the weeks passed, the girls kept showing up, but the bullying didn't fade. It grew sharper, meaner. Logan would accidentally knock into them during drills. Brent would laugh loudest when they stumbled. Racial slurs slipped into whispered jokes. "Monkeys in uniform," Brent once said, brushing past Alyssa after class. They told no one, not even their parents. Not at first. At home they smiled. "It's going great, Dad," Alyssa would say. "We're learning a lot." Their father, Marcus Reed, had a soldier's eye. Retired Army Ranger, built like a boulder, quiet like a shadow. He taught them discipline. He taught them to walk tall, and maybe that's why they didn't want to disappoint him. But Marcus noticed. He noticed the wince when Alyssa sat down too quickly, the way Amara avoided his gaze when he asked about practice. The extra laundry with stained sleeves and bruises just beneath the fabric. Still he waited, gave them time, watched. One night after practice, the girls walked through the front door later than usual, their eyes down, their GIs wrinkled. Marcus sat at the kitchen table, newspaper in hand, but he wasn't reading it. "Girls," he said softly, not looking up. "You know I love you more than anything. You don't have to carry pain alone." They froze. For a moment, the silence stretched. Then Alyssa laughed too quickly. "It's fine, Dad. Just a tough class." But Amara's voice cracked. "It's not fine." Marcus looked up, and in that look, he said everything without a word. They didn't tell him everything. Not yet. But it was enough for now. Later that night, Marcus walked into the garage and stood for a long time staring at the clutter. Tools, boxes, old workout gear. He opened a cabinet and pulled out a rolled mat thick with dust. The time for silence was over. The next morning, before the sun even crested over Ridgeview's rust-colored hills, Marcus was up and moving. He cleared out every shelf in the garage, rolled back the workbench, and swept the floor until the old concrete shimmered under a weak bulb. Then he pulled the thick mat into the center, unfurled it slowly, and let it settle. The sound was like a chapter turning. When Alyssa and Amara stumbled downstairs groggy from a restless sleep, they found their father in his old training gear, military-grade fatigues, boots laced, tight eyes, steely, but calm. "Out back," he said simply. "Now." They followed. No questions, just instinct. Inside the garage, the air felt different, charged. Marcus turned and faced them. "I'm not training you to win medals," he said. "I'm training you to survive." That first session was raw, nothing pretty, no kata, no elegant forms, just bodyweight drills, reaction, training, striking technique. Marcus didn't smile, but he didn't yell either. His voice was even, his movements precise. When Alyssa's punch was too high, he adjusted her stance. When Amara's balance slipped, he caught her elbow and reset her focus. By the end of that hour, both girls were dripping with sweat and gulping for air. "Tomorrow," Marcus said, tossing them 2 cold water bottles. Same time. And so it began. Every evening after dinner, they slipped away under the pretense of schoolwork. Lights off in their room, then quiet footsteps down to the garage where Marcus waited like clockwork. At first, their muscles ached so bad they could barely walk the next morning. But they didn't quit. Alyssa learned how to use her reach and timing. Amara, smaller and more compact, became lethal in close-range counters. Marcus drilled them in everything. How to fall without injury, how to break a wrist lock, how to roll and recover. But more than anything, he trained their minds. "Pain fades," he told them. "Fear only wins if you feed it." As the weeks passed, their schoolwork stayed solid. Their smiles at home grew steadier. But at Iron Crest, they remained silent shadows. Still mocked, still shoved. But now when Brent whispered "little monkey" under his breath, Alyssa didn't flinch. When Logan tried to trip Amara during warm-ups, she caught her balance like a cat. They didn't strike back. Not yet. But the quiet power building behind their eyes was something even Brent noticed. "Creepy how calm they are lately," he murmured one afternoon. "Creepy how quiet they stay," Logan added. "Like they know something we don't." They weren't wrong. The turning point came on a cold December morning when a flyer went up on the Dojo bulletin board. "Ridgeview Open Martial Arts Tournament, all belts, all ages." Alyssa spotted it first. Her heart beat faster. She tugged Amara's sleeve. "Look." They read the details together. An open division, no belt separation, a place where anyone could register. That night in the garage, they told Marcus. "You want to compete?" he asked, folding his arms. Alyssa nodded. "We're ready," Amara added softly. "We need to prove it. To ourselves. Not just to them." Marcus looked between them, and for the first time in weeks, a slow, proud smile touched his face. "Then let's sharpen the blade." From that night forward, training intensified. He added blindfold drills, combat scenarios, situational awareness games, how to fight if surrounded, how to breathe through adrenaline. Every lesson was a puzzle, every strike refined. Meanwhile, the dojo buzzed with tournament excitement. Brent and Logan boasted constantly about their coming dominance. "I'll knock out half the roster in round 1, Brent bragged. "Bet you anything," Logan chuckled, "especially if the Zoo twins try signing up." They laughed. Loud. But they weren't laughing 2 days later when Alyssa and Amara walked calmly to the tournament registration table, signed their names, and checked the box for open division. The room went silent. Brent's eyes widened. Logan blinked. "You're joking, right? No joke." Alyssa said, her tone measured. "We'll see you on the mat." Amara added, her voice steady as granite. Later that night, back in their garage, they prepared for one final session. Marcus set down the gloves. "Tomorrow isn't just a fight," he said. "It's a reckoning. But remember, stay within the rules. You don't need to destroy them to win. Just expose them." They nodded. No more fear. The Reed sisters were ready. The Ridgeview Open took place on a crisp Saturday morning in January, inside the Ridgeview Civic Arena, a massive structure usually reserved for high school championships and town hall events. That day, though, it belonged to martial arts. Banners hung from the rafters. Families filled the bleachers. Local reporters with shoulder-mounted cameras and clipboards walked the sidelines already looking for underdog stories. Alyssa and Amara walked in alongside their father dressed in their GIs, their hair pulled back, faces unreadable. Marcus carried a simple duffel bag and walked a half step behind them, letting his daughters lead. This was their moment, not his. Inside the gym, tension crackled like static. Competitors from across the region were warming up, stretching testing kicks in open corners of the mat. But all eyes shifted when the Reed sisters signed in at the open division table. Whispers flew. "Aren't they yellow belts?" someone muttered. "They can't be serious." Logan and Brent stood nearby, laughing out loud when they saw the names go down. "Oh, this is gonna be rich," Brent sneered. "We'll wipe the floor with them." Their sensei Tomlin stood a few feet back, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin line. He said nothing, but his eyes narrowed when the girls passed him without a glance. The preliminary rounds began with fanfare. Lower belts faced off in controlled matches. A dozen cheers rose, then quieted as point after point was scored. But the crowd leaned forward when the announcer read the next matchup, Alyssa Reed versus Logan Pierce Open Division. Murmurs turned into gasps. Even the judges straightened in surprise. Logan strutted onto the mat with a smirk. "Ready to embarrass yourself in front of the whole town," he hissed. Alyssa didn't flinch. She bowed to the judge, then turned to face him. No response. Just the calm she'd earned under hundreds of push-ups and sleepless garage nights. The bell rang. Logan lunged immediately, aiming for a quick takedown. But Alyssa pivoted on her back foot just like Marcus had taught her, and redirected his force with a sweep to his knee. Logan stumbled off balance. She didn't give him a second. A low kick to his side, sharp and fast, knocked the air from his lungs. Then a spinning strike, fast, clean, landed to his chest pad. He hit the mat, hard. The ref blew the whistle. The crowd gasped. A point. Logan got up, red-faced and shaking with anger. He charged again, reckless now, throwing a wild elbow. Illegal. Alyssa ducked, countered with a shoulder bump, and dropped him flat with a hook to the padded torso. Second point. It was over in less than a minute. Stunned silence filled the room. Alyssa bowed, stepped off the mat, and walked away. Marcus didn't clap. He just gave a single approving nod. She knew what that meant. Next came Amara's turn. Amara Reed versus Brent Wallace Open Division. Brent cracked his knuckles as he walked onto the mat, smirking. "2 for 2, huh? Let's dance, sweetheart." Amara said nothing. She bowed, took position. The bell rang. Brent tried to fake a roundhouse kick to lure her in, but she didn't bite. She waited. Calm. He advanced again. She sidestepped, pivoted, and let his momentum drive him straight into her palm strike. A thud. He reeled. Amara moved like water, low-centered, controlled. Every move crisp and measured. A kick to the thigh. A block. Then a takedown that landed him flat on his back. Point. Brent scrambled up, snarling now. He tried to grab her GI, break form, bully her off balance. But she spun out and slammed an elbow to his midsection, followed by a sweep to the ankle. Second point. It was over. The judges called it. The crowd exploded. Cheers from strangers. Awed claps from former skeptics. Phones recorded. Commentators murmured about the upset of the year. And somewhere in the back, Sensei Tomlin turned away, face dark with something close to shame. Logan and Brent limped off the mat, eyes filled with disbelief. But it wasn't over. While Alyssa and Amara stood at the edge of the arena, waiting for their next round, Brent and Logan stormed toward them through the crowd. Their expressions had twisted from embarrassment into rage. "You think you're better than us now?" Logan growled, stepping into Alyssa's space. Brent shoved Amara from behind hard. The girl staggered but recovered instantly, and this time, this wasn't a controlled match. Brent swung first, a hook aimed at Amara's face, but she ducked, countered with a palm to the sternum, then swept his legs out clean. He crashed to the floor. Logan lunged at Alyssa. She blocked, pivoted, grabbed his GI collar, and flipped him backward over her hip in a perfect shoulder throw. The crowd went wild again, but now in chaos. Screams, shouting, people moving in every direction. Officials rushed in. Coaches tried to intervene, but it was already over. Alyssa and Amara stood unmoved, calm, ready, not a scratch on them, and all of it was caught on camera. Within minutes, Brent and Logan were escorted off the floor, faces bruised, egos shattered, and the whispers began. Not about the Reed sisters being weak, but about the injustice they'd endured. The truth was no longer a secret, and the town of Ridgeview, it was finally paying attention. The aftermath was instant. Before the tournament even ended, clips of the confrontation flooded social media. Within hours, a local sports blog ran the headline, "Ridgeview's youngest underdogs defeat Dojo favorites, then defend themselves from post-match assault." The footage showed everything: the illegal hits, the retaliation, the precision, and the restraint. By sundown, the town was divided. Some called it a disgrace. They shouldn't have fought outside the match, a parent huffed on Facebook. Others fired back. They were attacked. What were they supposed to do, stand there and take it? Meanwhile, the tournament board met behind closed doors. Marcus, calm and prepared, submitted every piece of evidence. Witness statements, tournament footage, screenshots of Logan's and Brent's online bullying, and a medical report showing mild bruising on Amara's ribs. The board issued a ruling the next morning. Logan Pierce and Brent Wallace were permanently suspended from competition in the Ridgeview district. Their attacks were ruled premeditated, unsportsmanlike, and dangerous. The Reed sisters completely cleared. Their response had been within bounds of personal defense. For most, that would have been the end, but not for Brent and Logan's fathers. Robert Wallace and Grant Pierce weren't used to losing. They were used to handshakes in boardrooms and backdoor influence. So when the news broke, they erupted. They cheated, Robert barked during a radio interview. There had to be secret coaching. It's a disgrace to the tournament system. Grant added, there will be lawsuits, I promise you that. But the tournament board stood firm. Their victory was clean. Their self-defense was necessary. Their conduct was exemplary. Still, Robert and Grant were not finished. That night, just before 11 p.m., they pulled up in a dark gray SUV outside the Reed family home. The porch light was on. The air was cold. Inside, Marcus was reviewing news coverage when the motion light on the driveway flickered. He stood, checked the doorbell camera, and saw them standing there. He didn't hesitate. "Lisa," he said to his wife, who was already walking toward him, "take the girls upstairs. Lock the door." "I've got this." She nodded without a word. The door cracked open, chain latched. Marcus's voice came steady and low. "It's late. You're on private property." Robert leaned forward. "You're going to retract those lies, publicly, or things are going to get messy." Grant added, "We don't want your daughters getting hurt any further. We want this erased." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "So you came to threaten my family, on my doorstep, at night." He shut the door. The sound of the chain unlatching echoed through the hall. Then he stepped out, closing the door behind him. "Let me guess," Marcus said, stepping forward. "You thought this would be like the dojo. No accountability, no pushback, just control." "You're making a mistake," Robert growled. "No, Marcus said you did." Robert moved first, shoving him hard, but Marcus stepped aside, redirected his arm, and twisted his wrist behind his back in one smooth motion. Robert yelped, his knees buckling. Grant charged next. Marcus lowered his stance, lifted him off the ground in a clean shoulder bump, and dropped him to the porch floor. 10 seconds, maybe less. Lights from the neighbors' homes flicked on. Curtains shifted. Then came the distant whoop of a siren. Someone had already called the police. When officers Martinez and Liu pulled up, Marcus stood calmly on the porch, hands open, the two wealthy fathers groaning at his feet. "What happened here?" Officer Martinez asked. "I have it all on camera," Marcus said, pointing to the security cam over the garage. "They threatened my family. I defended my home." Robert tried to stand. "He assaulted us. We were trying to talk," Grant pointed, his hand trembling. "This man's dangerous. He taught those girls to fight like soldiers." Officer Liu checked the camera feed on Marcus's phone, then turned to Martinez. "This is more than assault," he muttered. "It's criminal intimidation." Moments later, Robert and Grant were handcuffed and loaded into the back of separate patrol cars. Inside the house, Alyssa and Amara peeked through the upstairs window, watching their father speak to police beneath the porch light. For the first time in a long time, Amara whispered, "We're safe." Alyssa nodded, because he stood up. The next day, headlines erupted again. Dojo fathers arrested after threatening Ridgeview sisters. Video evidence clears. Local veteran in self-defense incident. Suddenly, the focus wasn't just on the sisters. It was on the system. Sensei Tomlin was contacted by local officials to explain his failure to intervene during repeated complaints. Former students began speaking up. Parents came forward with emails and stories of favoritism. Bruises ignored concerns. A formal investigation was launched into Ironcrest Dojo. In a public hearing 1 week later, the findings were read aloud. Multiple verified complaints of bullying behavior by advanced students. Documented racial bias. Failure to protect minors from abuse. Preferential treatment based on family donations. The dojo's license was suspended. Tomlin's instructor credentials revoked. Ironcrest closed its doors permanently. And just like that, the empire built on silence collapsed. But the Reed family, they had only just begun. The building that once housed Ironcrest Dojo sat empty now, its windows covered with brown butcher paper and its nameplate gone. The parking lot where families once dropped off eager children was silent weeds beginning to push through the cracks in the asphalt. Ridgeview had moved on, but it hadn't forgotten. Alyssa and Amara Reed did not return to martial arts right away. Their bodies had healed quickly. Their minds needed a little longer. But the story didn't end with the closing of the old dojo. One chilly February morning, a handwritten letter arrived in the Reed family mailbox. The return address read, Unity Martial Arts Academy Director Elena Cho. Inside the message was simple. I've heard about your daughters. I believe in their strength and the power of justice. If they're willing to keep learning, I'd be honored to meet them. Marcus showed the note to the girls at the breakfast table. Amara blinked. Do you think it's real? Alyssa smiled. Only one way to find out. That weekend they visited Unity Academy. It was nothing like Ironcrest. No trophies on the wall, no hushed reverence or rigid hierarchy. Just people of all ages, backgrounds, and belt colors moving together, laughing, learning. Master Elena Cho greeted them in a black guy with red trim and a warm smile. She bowed deeply. Welcome, she said. At Unity, we teach strength, empathy, and courage in equal parts. The twins stepped onto the mat that day with cautious hearts, but they left with something they hadn't felt in months. Peace. Under Master Cho's instruction, Alyssa and Amara not only regained their confidence, but refined their discipline. Elena took special care to study their past, their experience, their trauma, and their remarkable talent. By spring, both girls had advanced 2 belt levels and were regularly called upon to help newer students. Then at the Academy's quarterly award ceremony, Master Cho made a surprise announcement. For the first time, we are naming 2 junior mentors, not just for their skill, but for their example. Alyssa and Amara Reed, please come forward. Gasps and cheers filled the dojo. The girls stepped forward stunned. Master Cho continued, You've shown us what real martial arts looks like. Not violence, not ego, but discipline, resilience, and compassion. You stood against injustice, and now you help others rise. That moment was a turning point. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about showing up Brent or Logan or anyone who had hurt them. It was about becoming something greater. A few weeks later, the Ridgeview School District contacted the Reed family. The state's education department had taken note of the girls' story and offered them a rare opportunity to become student ambassadors in a new anti-bullying initiative. They would travel to schools across the county, leading workshops, speaking on stage, and teaching basic self-defense, mental and physical. The program was called Stand Strong, the Reed Sisters Pledge. The response was overwhelming. At every school, students lined up to speak to them. Some shared their own bullying stories. Others simply said thank you. One boy, just 10 years old, approached Amara and said, I thought I had to just take it, but you showed me I don't. Their impact rippled far beyond Ridgeview. By summer, Alyssa and Amara had been interviewed on local TV, featured in a national youth magazine, and even invited to a martial arts leadership summit for young changemakers. But at home, life remained simple. They still cleaned their rooms, still helped mom with groceries, still trained with dad in the garage just like they always had. Marcus never bragged, but his quiet pride glowed in his eyes every time someone shook his hand and said, Your daughters changed everything. And so the girls who once walked into a dojo as outsiders became the very symbol of what martial arts and justice were truly meant to be. Because standing tall isn't just about strength, it's about refusing to shrink, about finding your voice even in the silence, and about knowing that even when no one stands with you at first, if you stand with truth, others will rise. If you've made it to the end of this story, take a deep breath with me. Let it out slowly, because what Alyssa and Amara faced, it wasn't fiction for far too many. Bullying, racism, indifference from those who should protect. But what they did next, that was extraordinary. They chose not to be broken. They chose to train, to grow, and to act with honor even when they had every reason to rage. Their father didn't storm into the dojo demanding answers. He quietly gave his daughters the tools to rise, not with anger, but with purpose. And that's the lesson. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes power is silent endurance, quiet discipline, calm in the face of cruelty, and justice. It doesn't always come when you want it. It doesn't always wear a badge or a robe. Sometimes justice arrives in the form of two girls standing tall after months of pain refusing to be pushed aside. So if you're out there facing something unfair, feeling small, unheard, remember the Reed sisters. Remember their bruises, their silence, their strength. And know this, you are not powerless. You are not alone. And your story is not over. If this story moved you, even just a little, leave a comment and tell me why. Share it with someone who needs it. And if you believe like I do in the power of justice in everyday life, subscribe. I've got more stories to tell. Good night.